Hello, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Astro Talk panel discussion on current events and how it is impacting us and the world. So who would like to start?
Love it. So,
Well,
Kim Marie, you can put this chart up. This is a fascinating chart. Can you tell us where it
Oh,
came from?
sure. Let's get this for the recording. An astrologer named Michael Casey did some research after the Library of Congress published letters of Benjamin Franklin that were found. They published those letters in 1989. And it wasn't just Benjamin Franklin, it was other attendees of the Continental Congress. And Ben Franklin was quoted as saying that he remembers signing the Declaration of Independence between 9 and 11 a.m., not just him, but the group signing between 9 and 11 a.m. So Michael Casey went to work and did some research with like about 24 different time periods in that 2 hour. And this is the one that he felt throughout history with forecasting reflected the most accurate time of the signing. So I started using this chart about 5 years ago. And for any listeners who don't know this, I came through the Jeffrey Wolf Green method of evolutionary astrology. And so what struck for me was the chart showing a fifth house Pluto. And as I say, have you known a more egotistical country in the world than the United States? So, and Michael Casey published a synopsis of his research in NCGR's quarterly publication. I think they're quarterly. Anyway, I do have that PDF if anybody is interested in it. And perhaps Sue, could I like send that to you and you get it into this recording? Or
Sure. Yeah, we can
in
we can put it
when
in
you
the
put
in the documents. We have a set of
yeah,
documents on the EA
sure, and
things.
and if you put it up on YouTube in the comments,
yeah, we'll put a link to the
sure.
document.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll get that to both of you when we're done.
sounds good.
Sure. That's the history. So I don't want to, monopolize anybody else looking at this chart, even for the first time. Comments?
Yeah, I was looking at the Virgo ascendant, which is fascinating because, when you look at the shadow of Virgo, it's really being very critical, but it can be really critical of the other. And I think Jordan was talking about the Puritans coming over, and that speaks heavily to that, doesn't it, Jordan?
Yeah, I I'm from the same lineage or whatever you want to say, evolutionary astrology through Jeffrey Wolf Green as Kim Marie is. And so whenever I was looking at this and I was mulling over how in evolutionary astrology we speak so much about the structure of the consciousness as well, which is a Saturnian dynamic, right? And I was thinking about how the structure of even the collective consciousness here as a nation, America, is pertaining to this conditioning that happened when Puritans first even came over here. Like they were part of John Calvin's movement, right? And whenever you look at that through a historical context, that really created this dynamic of what they conceptualized as God and evil. And so you think about how they treated indigenous people, it was a way to going
Uh-oh.
on because they came here
We
for
missed that
religious
part.
freedom. Oh, what?
You
We
cut out
missed
a
that
little
Oh,
bit.
my
part.
internet.
You
Hold,
cut
yeah.
out.
Okay, this might be better. You know, the Puritans demonized indigenous people that they came into contact with because of their belief system through Calvinism. Yet which, by the way, some of this is getting spewed right now through our administration, especially the vice president talking about, child sacrifices that Indigenous people did. And there's been a lot of Indigenous people coming out and saying that's not true. This comes from that type of conditioning. But the irony is when you look at this chart, and I mean, please chime in, is that when you're looking at Pluto retrograde and then the south node in the fifth, but in Aquarius and that north node in Leo in the 11th, people came here, the Puritans, for religious freedom. And yet there's this hypocrisy that has been ingratiated within the collective consciousness around how there's supreme forms of religion as a way to demonize others, that's the enemy, they're evil, they're this, because there's a cultural difference, right? And so it's really speaking to even the identity of America, I feel like. And then we had the Revolutionary War, and that was more of this John Knox, who studied under John Calvin. He came up with Presbyterian, but that's even ingrained in the conditioning of that. And to me, this is all over that chart with the Virgo ascendant, Pisces descendant, the inability to listen to other cultures from where they're coming from, what their values are, and just this dynamic of inclusion, exclusion, and hypocrisy that's played out over time here. So,
Yeah, Neptune and Virgo too.
Yeah, yeah, it sure
Yeah.
is.
yeah.
Which is powerful in that first house. Especially when you think about, I see the chart as, representing the emergence of the soul and the purification that we needed or need as a group consciousness. And with that south node, in the fifth house, it also represents the shadow that needs to be purified, that needs to be worked on. It's like karma has ripened. So that south node represents who we were as a nation or our people in prior lives, because the south node represents who we actually were. And so that means that you have to go back and look at what is the shadow side of Aquarius, and of course Aquarius can always think that it is right and everybody else is wrong, and it's
Elitism.
Exactly. And it's connected with Saturn, of course, because Saturn is the traditional ruler, and Saturn is in that second house. And that aspect is a part of who we are as a nation. And what we're moving towards is that North Node in Leo. And so, isn't it fascinating that the people who are running the country right now, they're Leos, but they're doing their best to, they're not shining their light just because, they're shining their light because of ego. It has nothing to do with really wanting to have the rays. Well, never mind, I won't go into all that, but
they're on the lower, on the shadow side of Leo.
Exactly.
Well, I think it's interesting that that's the fifth house, but it's in Aquarius. It's paradoxical. It, to me, shows the historical context of utilizing whole groups of people, right, to benefit another.
Yeah.
And then here we have people who are coming into power who have, with that Pluto and Leo, that generation, and yet it's like you said, the shadow, but it's also pulling in this dynamic with that moon in Aquarius ruling all of that Cancer, right? We elect people and they become the national identity, the leadership, right? And then they are the people who can see things into the collective. And when you're looking at that with the Pluto and Leo generation, they're actually reflecting more of this Aquarian dynamic of the social dinosaur. Make America great again, right? Social dinosaur. It's in that statement. And that's the South Node in Aquarius in that fifth house. So it's connected to that moon that's ruling all of that Cancer.
Oh,
And that Mercury, of
absolutely.
course, is opposing, something's wanting to be thrown off there.
Yeah.
Well,
And
with
yeah.
Pluto coming into transit those nodes, I mean, the time
That-
is
Yep.
right for us to work out the whole shadow aspect of our evolutionary mission
Oh,
for this country.
absolutely. Yeah. And we can't leave out Uranus up there in Gemini on the midheaven, really. It's on the ninth house side in Placidus, but it might be in Porphyry. Oh no, you've got it on Porphyry.
Yeah, this is Porphyry.
Yeah, that's Porphyry. Yeah, so what is truth?
So what I find interesting about that Uranus on the midheaven is that that degree happens to be where the Neptune-Pluto conjunction was in the 1800s.
Oh, you're right. Yep.
And the
1890s.
yeah. And the only other one was like in I think it was, I just looked 1399. It was also in Gemini, earlier Gemini. So like the what do you guys think about that?
Well, check this out. So when you go to the 1890s, this is whenever imperialism really started happening in America. And it's because years prior to that, in between Jackson and Abraham Lincoln, John O'Sullivan coined manifest destiny. And this came back in during that conjunction in the 1890s. So that was a thought that was seated in the collective that then was used in a delusionary dynamic to create more fear around resources. Taurus in that ninth house cusp in order to expand the frontier, because the US Census at that time had just came out and said that the frontier was no more. And so it created an immense amount of anxiety, Aquarius, and it created a cultural divide again, where people were afraid that there were not enough resources, Taurus on that cusp. And so people were having this collective division. Like if you look at what was going on with America and Cuba at the time, there was a humanitarian crisis, and Americans were speaking out about this, and a whole other group of people were not. And then throughout the presidency, what was the first Roosevelt? I forget which one it was. I always
Theodore?
Teddy.
confuse them.
Teddy.
Teddy.
Was it
Yes.
Teddy?
So it was him during this time that came out of that. And that's whenever he created a new frontier and expanded imperialism by utilizing Cuba first. And then all of a sudden, we're annexing Hawaii. We're coming up with a way to gain Puerto Rico and, all of these other areas, because it became this delusiveness in a cultural divide, another cultural war that was actually seeded years before through manifest destiny, right? That collective narcissism of we have a right to expand wherever we want because God has chosen us to do this. So that's a way that I see that conjunction playing out pertaining to this.
And so now here we are at the sextile, the opening sextile. And I think Eric, didn't you want to talk a little bit about that? And
When you say the sextile, what exactly are you
the Neptune Pluto, we had the
All right.
conjunction
Oh,
in the 1890s, and now here we are, finally getting well, no, in it we are kind of wrapping up the completion of the sextile. I mean,
Oh yeah, well, it's functional for many decades, isn't it?
yeah, it's since 1950 actually.
Yeah, and almost everyone has that in their chart to some
Yeah.
degree. Um, yeah, and that's still going to be operable for quite a while. Um, yeah, I don't want to shift the conversation away from this chart. I mean, what I wanted to talk about Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, uh, in that triangular configuration, but that pulls us away from a little bit. If people want to talk about this more, I can wait with some of that content.
Two comments. Thank you, Eric. Going back to what Jordan was saying in this natal chart just for a moment. I live in the Black Hills of Western South Dakota. Our state is 10% Native American. The city I live in is 25% Native American. And so to me, this just so represents all of the Indian boarding school situation. The Wounded Knee Massacre, which has been in the news lately because what did they, I don't know, I can't remember, reinstating the medals for the soldiers that perpetrated the massacre of 230 some Native Americans, mainly women and children, starving December 30th, 1890 something.
Oh,
Um,
hmm.
yes. Yeah. And so I actually live about a half a mile. When the boarding schools came up in my area, and they took the children away, all of the families camped out along. I live in Rapid City. We have Rapid Creek that goes through us. I'm a half a mile away from where the boarding school was. And so we actually have recently had a federal court case in which land in our city was taken away from the natives after it was given to them, duh, as it happened everywhere. And so there actually was a court case that said you will either give this land back, and it's where they put all of the churches, where they put our National Guard for our state, where they put a bunch of our schools. And they said you will either give the land back or you will make what's the word? Reparations, I think it is.
Reparations.
Yes, and so the city of Rapid City has actually taken one area that hasn't been built upon, and they have been doing that sonar in the ground and finding where the graves are of the children that are not, nobody knows that they're unmarked graves. It's just a hill, and they're actually, I'm hopeful with um, the city I live in because they're creating a whole park and a monument, and they are having an annual parade with speeches to honor all of the children that were basically beaten or died of sickness as the boarding school stories go. And they're actually collecting the stories of the boarding school survivors in this area where I live. So that Virgo Pisces, horizontal axis, again, it shows the extremes, but it also then shows some of the healings that have been taking place. And I think that as a lot of this came out with Saturn's transit in the last couple of years. And one more thing they'll say to that, in both Donald Trump's chart and the USA chart, this one here, 9:37 a.m., transiting Neptune in the seventh house, to me, it's been reflective of how we've been looking for that savior who's going to come in and save us from, this and that and everything else that Donald Trump spews. And perhaps as Neptune moves into Aries, we're going to start to have some of the truths revealed, in that he's not a savior. He's the opposite. He's anything but that. One more thing I'll say very quickly. I've been saying when transiting Pluto comes across this south node, the rebellions will begin. That's going to happen right between the Uranus returns again for the USA, which are also going to be next year in 2026. Transiting Pluto off the south node, 2026. The Uranus return again, 2026. So stay tuned. Let's see if we can heal any of the splits in this country. Let's see if we can open up to truth, perhaps through our pocketbooks, which seems to, it's the economy, stupid, said James Carville. So I just wanted to quickly feed off of Jordan and not to move forward if somebody else has other comments, but Eric, starting next year, 26, you probably already know this. Well, I'll just say it for the public quick. 2026 through 2032, Neptune makes 13 more waxing sextiles to Pluto. So I'll,
And then you have
That's
all
all I
the
want to
other planets coming in to make an
the
opposition
sextiles
with
and
Jupiter.
trines.
Jupiter comes into Leo, and and then you've got the sextiles, and
Yeah,
I'm
okay, so
trine.
yeah, I want to
oh,
pick up
go
on
ahead, Eric.
what Kim was just saying, because this was the main thing that I wanted to highlight. So thank you for bringing it forward, Kim. Is Pluto on the south node while the Uranus return is going on. So my view is um, it's a process over a number of years, actually. And, this is one thing that we do know for certain. We know the planetary transits. What we don't know is the house layout. Um, there's a lot of different charts for the USA out there, with the Sagittarius rising, the Sibley chart I've seen with Gemini rising, Scorpio rising, this one with Virgo rising. And where I'm sitting, I don't know. Who's to say when the exact moment the USA became a country? I don't know. To me, it's a process, not a moment. I can't say for sure which chart would be accurate or what houses we should be looking at transiting planets in. We don't know that for sure. But what we do know for sure is what I mentioned. And let's talk a little bit more about that. And this country, of course, was founded upon revolution. That's Aquarius, and there's a need for that with the moon in Aquarius, to rise up and change. And we're not going to take it anymore kind of attitude, Boston Tea Party and all of that. We all know American history. And so there is a revolutionary flavor, not only with the moon, the emotional desire of people in this country, but the karma. South Node in Aquarius, obviously, that's what created this country. Now, this revolutionary fervor can take many different forms. It's not always progressive. You can have revolutionaries who want fascism in this country, and a lot of them are very Aquarian. Alex Jones has a lot of Aquarius, and it could, Aquarius can be things that are anti establishment and revolutionary in a wide variety of ways, not just progressive. So that's what we're seeing is this progressive Uranian upset the apple cart type of rising this next time frame in a variety of ways. People are up in arms. What is this country about? And, just the phrase, we're going to take the country back. That was what began the Revolutionary War. And that sentiment is said by a wide variety of different paradigms and perspectives, and political persuasions use that phrase. So this is what is going to be playing out these next few years. What does it mean to have another revolution? What does it mean to rise up and take our country back? Which could be many things, but that is what is going to be playing out on the collective scale, is that type of issue. And so people say there's a battle for the soul of this country. I agree. What does it mean to take the country back? What does it mean to actually develop Aquarius? About modernization, about moving to the 21st century, about things that are more interdependent, metaphysical, equitable, and innovative. What does that mean? Or is there distortion on that? Pluto. Is there power dynamics, Pluto, that get in the way of Aquarian modernization? These are the things that are going to play out. That's my 2 cents on it.
Well, I like that. Now, when I'm looking at, when I think about Aquarius and its highest manifestation, I think about being able to be your unique, individuated self inside the group without fear of retribution. That is something I believe that Aquarian energy is fighting for. And I think that's what we are. I think that's what we are I think that's where we're headed. But I also know that with Pluto, we really won't know how this cycle is going to shake out until Pluto gets to the mid degrees of Aquarius, that 15-degree mark, which I don't think that's going to happen for, what is it, another 8 or 9 years. We'll be able to know which way the wind is actually blowing. We're in the beginning stages of this particular cycle, this particular war. And what is it a war for? It's really about authentic power and what that looks like for the collective. Are we going to celebrate the individual inside the group and their unique ability to have their own viewpoints without being persecuted? That's where I see that moon in Aquarius, because we are unique, we are quirky, we are different. This is our collective, and this is our karma too. And so yeah, and we've unfortunately or fortunately been playing out the shadow, trying to get to the light of that Leo. And Aquarius can be very protective and can be inclusive of the whole. But right now, we're so darn divisive in this country. How do we get rid of the divisiveness so that we can even hear what is good for everyone?
I want to make a note on the Leo North Node on the US chart. Something that I think is really important here is that, to me, the Leo North Node is best understood with the Sun in Cancer as its dispositor or ruler, and that is about finding home. And the country, was founded upon a lot of people searching for a new opportunity. A lot of people from situations that were difficult or downtrodden or oppressive or limiting rights or what have you. And the whole motion towards immigration that has unfolded has been about a lot of people coming to the US for another opportunity. And so we have the fragmentation of the dark Aquarius, of things being perhaps a background where there might be trauma, or things that are unsettled, or things that are not necessarily comfortable. And so the Leo is not, in my view, about anything narcissistic or egoic. That's a distortion. The spirit of it is about a new opportunity to be in the proverbial sunshine, to have life be a way that is affirmative, and the motion towards home, to make a new area a home, is the rulership of the Cancer Sun. And that's largely what's happened in Jupiter and Cancer, involved with travel, with international cross-cultural things, the proverbial melting pot, so to speak, that we can create a new home. That's, to me, what the spirit of the chart is about, regardless, really, of what houses that we don't know for sure of, where things are located. But that, this optimism, this sense of finding home, is needing to be resolved mainly with Pluto karma, with the South Node. And Pluto in Capricorn is patriarchal, the king. And now we have a new version of that, and we have no king's rallies. And this idea of the consolidation of power for the wealthy, for the elites, the distorted Capricorn is the issue. And that is what is being negotiated, so we can have that more Leo, brighter Leo and Cancer, that we can all have a home together and interdependence when we no longer are so prone to patriarchal domination consciousness, which is basically Pluto and Capricorn with the south node of the USA. That's what we're addressing. And it's in another form right now with the current leadership, just like we had 200 and some odd years ago, 250 years ago, whatever it's been.
The
Almost
question is,
exactly,
have
because
we,
next year is the 250th anniversary of the country.
yeah, it is. And the question is, where are we in this cycle, this spiral? Have we done any healing since the country has been founded? You know, and I think we've done some healing. I think, of course, we've got a heck of a long way to go, but we have to honor what we've actually achieved within that period of time. Sue, do we know what the Sabian symbol is for that Pluto in Capricorn? I thought we had looked
I
that
can
up
look.
because I'm just wondering. And then because Pluto, you know, we're looking at 28 degrees for the Sabian symbol, and we're going back over something too because it's Capricorn, and it's retrograde and it's loud. And what is it really asking of us?
You asked about
You
the
know?
Pluto?
Just the Sabian symbol and what that is saying.
Or 28 Capricorn?
Right.
It is.
Awareness of spiritual messages.
Well, what this the astrological mandala says a large aviary denotes the enjoyment of spiritual values by the soul able to familiarize itself with their implications.
So what does that mean?
Well, you want me to read the explanation?
Yes.
Birds symbolize spiritual forces, and the aviary presents us with a picture of these forces or desires contained within a mind open to the light of psychic or soul realities and bringing joy and harmony to the consciousness. The strenuous ascent represented by the preceding scene changes into a picture of familiarity with inspiring experience. Yet this familiarity may also suggest a lack of spontaneity and of the thrill of discovery. To use modern terms, the peak experiences have become those of a high plateau, at which level one may lose one's sense of direction at times. This is the third stage in the 60th sequence of phases, which lead to group mastery of cosmic energies. The youthful effort to reach the summits of cultural and spiritual attainment has settled down into a complex state of inspiration, a state which at times may bring confusion because of the multiplicity of the voices to which one has become open. One may speak here of clairaudience, meaning a capacity for being responsive to many inner voices.
Wow.
So what does that say to you?
I say we're fighting against it.
Oh,
We're
I
not
have
going
my-
with the flow. We're not
I
going with
have
the
my
birds.
I have my Mercury at 28 cap.
Oh, wow.
And it, although it's in my ninth house, so it's a bit of a different flavor. Something that to me isn't that I was feeling into that whenever you were saying it is there's threads and it shows up in this chart too. And it also goes to what Eric, you were speaking about on some level without so many words is like, in order to open up to the truth, there needs to be a willingness to hear where others are coming from so that there can be a mastery and a harmony that comes from unity and diversity, especially because this is a culturally diverse country and has been. The problem that happens is whenever the supreme delusional thinking comes in and thinks that it's better than, right? And it doesn't want to listen to where others are coming from or what they feel would be beneficial. And so it's beckoning us to liberate from that dynamic in order for a restructuring to happen so we can honor all cultures that are here. I think of, Kim, you live in the foothills. I'm from Oklahoma. I just moved from there I have intergenerational trauma. I have a grandparent who went to an Indian boarding school. I know the effects of what that is. I have friends who will not carry a $20 bill for a particular reason. I grew up with this, and something I come back to time and time again pertaining to the things that we're talking about, and I've spoken about this before. I also have children who are Black and Indigenous. When I think of specifically those two groups of people, people who are Black, who came here, were enslaved, they had their own tribes as well. My oldest is part of the Bantu people, amongst a couple of other tribes. Um, what I feel could be really beneficial, and this is like in a very evolved state, right? I'm going to be Pollyanna for just a second, right? Is that those of us who come from a more patriarchal background could be an apprentice through just observing these other cultures that come from natural law. And if we were to observe and not put the emotional burden on these groups of people, but to observe, to ask, is there something I can do to help? What would be healing? That would express the unity and diversity and a natural humility in order for healing to happen, right? Where people could practice their natural rituals, their laws, their religions, their cosmologies, whatever, coming from a natural place. And everyone could be each other's teacher to come together and observe the magic that can happen when unity and diversity is really embraced. Do I think that's going to happen anytime soon? No, like I don't. But that is something that I see with that Sabian symbol, right? What you were expressing is this kind of dynamic of needing to hear others, needing to not be like, that's stupid, or to be open. What does that look like? And to allow it to teach us. So I could go on, but I'm not going to.
No.
And also, with the Saturn in Libra, listening
Yes.
Yeah.
is key. And I think so many of us just don't listen. We're just waiting for the next opportunity to speak.
Yes.
Yeah, and it does trine that Uranus and Gemini, which is diversity of ideas
Mm-hmm.
and thinking.
And the Statue of Liberty, that's our mantra for this country. We don't get out of that. I mean, and what we've got is factions fighting against even our own belief system, our own mantra, and fighting against what this country actually is.
Just out of curiosity, does anybody know when we got the Statue of Liberty? Was it in the 1800s?
That would be a
think
good
it
chart
was
to pull up.
Yeah.
Let me just see.
early 1800s. It was the 1800s. Well, maybe it wasn't early. It was a gift from France, as we all
right.
know.
Yeah. Let's
It was
see
in
what
the
Dr. Google
1800s,
says.
and I don't remember the exact day, but I remember mentioning it in my book on Uranus that it's has a Uranus Jupiter major aspect, and the hugeness of the statue symbolizing liberty with the torch is very Uranus Jupiter.
Oh, wow.
I wanna-
October 28th, 1886.
yeah, that's
okay.
so I want to mention another historical point. Is that yes, 1770s, the Revolutionary War. Many astrologers have noted this, that the next Uranus return was the Civil War. The next Uranus return was World War II. And that's the three biggest wars that the U.S. has been involved with. You also have World War I, but that's another topic, and some other wars too. But those three huge wars, Revolutionary, Civil, and World War II, Uranus and Gemini. I want to make a comment about this. Is that in my view, Uranus and Gemini is not warlike. And the US also has Mars in Gemini. And when a planet like Uranus is transiting a sign, it's activating that archetype, and there is whole sign logic. Now things get more punctuated and hotter and more specific when things are exact, but there's still what we might call whole sign logic. So I don't believe Gemini has anything to do with militarism or war, but Mars does. And the fact that the US has Mars in Gemini is the real reason, not Uranus in Gemini, is my view. So we are going to have Uranus and Gemini for 7 more years. Well, I don't do predictions. I think astrology can play out in infinite ways depending on our co-creative management. So I'm not predicting war. I don't do predictions. But is there likely to be upheaval and conflict or divisiveness? Well, that's Mars and Gemini over ideas, over polarity, over red versus blue, perhaps, or east versus west, or any other polarity and division. This is the evolutionary work. How it plays out, we'll see. I don't know. But certainly, I don't think it's a stretch to say that things will be in a state of upheaval and uncertainty. And there likely is going to be a lot of Gemini, a lot of debate, let's just put it that way, about the direction where things ideally should go. I do think that the US is redefining how we are going to move forward as a union or not. And that will play out for several years. And that's what this astrology points to. And I would even go as far as to say that this will be one of the biggest passages in US history these next few years. I do think there's going to be a lot of big news about how we're going to define what it is to be American.
I totally agree. And Kim Marie, I saw you pointing to the Neptune Mars square, and the point I want to make before you start is that look at all of the what happened with Jupiter going through Gemini and the Mars retrograde in Gemini. We had all of that we had that Mars activated, we had the Neptune activated, and we had all of this information, disinformation became information, and fake news became real news. So
well, we know Mercury is the trickster, and what is the intention? I mean, what is the intention of having the fake news? Is it to distract us, or is it to have us not know what the truth is? So yeah,
I did this again for the chart that I'm using to just say the US has always swung back and forth between inclusive, exclusive trends. Given the opposition, the 2 squares you see on the screen, and then in the background, you can see we have that wide grand trine in air. And I think just that visual kind of, again, describes our history. And what are we going to do?
Yeah, and with Chiron square that Pluto Mercury opposition, I mean, there is misinformation or media manipulation or something about what we're being taught, Mercury, that is coming from the elitist power grab of Pluto and Capricorn at the dark side. We could think about basically elites controlling mass media or something along those lines. And then you have Chiron in Aries that is square the opposition there, I should say, Pluto Mercury. And this is where it's pretty interesting because the US has been at a Chiron return these last couple years. And even right now, Chiron is retrograding back to the low 20s in Aries, which is pretty damn close to Chiron natally at 20 Aries. So what that means to me is that it's up to the individual Aries to learn how to think for themselves, to question everything, and to rely on their own sense of empowerment rather than giving power away to the Pluto and patriarchal mass media machine. And I think there's a lot of people, and sometimes it could be conspiracy theorists and things that are misguided. Other times it could be accurate and much more inspired, but questioning the official, story. And there's been plenty of things in the news these last couple decades that have led to a lot of people questioning the official story, whether or not that's 9/11 or COVID or other things. This has been much more pervasive as a follower of the news. I'm 54. I was born in 1971. I would say that the last 20 years, coverage of the news and the general discourse has been a lot more skeptical and challenging of the official story than it used to be basically in the 20th century. That's the difference of the 21st century compared to the 20th, is people don't believe stuff anymore. Now, a lot of that could be conspiratorial and misguided, certainly, but that to me is the Chiron and Aries of questioning things to take back the narrative about how things are.
Well, one of the biggest sayings I remember from maybe the 70s and 80s was question authority, and here we are.
And that's what Aquarius
Well,
would
and that
certainly
speaks to
do
that
too.
Pluto retrograde, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I wonder, I personally think things shifted for us when we dropped the bomb during World War II. I think we unleashed something and shifted something energetically. And so I don't know, the date or anything of when that was, but that to me would signify this.
Well, it was
Where?
1945, and Uranus was around the exact return at that point. That was correlating with the Uranus return. And then I put that chart in my Uranus book. There was also action to the Mars, and Mars was involved. So again, Uranus and Gemini is innovation of technology that led to dropping bombs of a nuclear variety. But again, there's also a Martial activation, not just Uranus, is the point I want to make. But it was pretty much at that Uranus return. So here we are again at this Uranus return. And my view is the return does not have to be exact. One of my biggest pet peeves in astrology is what I call the obsession with exactitude. To me, the applying stage is at least 5 to 7, if not in some cases more. I encourage everyone to read Cosmos and Psyches by Rick Tarnas. Is the applying stage is when things heat up, and when things are exact is the beginning of the separation phase. And the applying stage is often ignored for the exact hits. But the applying stage is very relevant now. In 2026, Uranus gets up to 5.5 Gemini. That's only 3 degrees from the US natal Gemini. It looks like at 854. So 3 degrees to me is plenty.
Yeah,
exact.
Well, you start to feel it, or at least I do. I start to feel it when the planet actually gets into the sign.
Right. Exactly.
Regardless of what the degree is. I mean, it's game on.
Exactly. So we have next year in 2026, Uranus within about 3 degrees or so. Pluto gets up to within 1 degree of the US South Node in Aquarius. It stations next at 5.5 or something like that, or 540 something. That is 1 degree. So even though these things are not precisely exact in 26, they are, in my view, in that time frame of the peaking over the next few years. So I really see it in a more elongated way as a longer passage than some might. But it's very much, in my view, going on in 26 and 27 and into the 28 election. Still, these next 3 years, pretty much exact with these two things.
When I look at any of these charts, and I think about the sun, and I think about, the moon and what we're being asked to do, and of course, the Chiron and Aries, we have historically, unfortunately, given our power to whoever we elect. And we have assumed that they're going to do the right thing, what is right for us. And what we've done is given away our power to the other. And I believe that, we do have to do our own individual work and do our own research and find out what is right for the individual so that we can then know, who do we want to put in power, and what is, and does, just because we put someone in power, do they really have the power? It's supposed to be the people. And so we are evolving our consciousness, or we're being asked to evolve our consciousness, but we have to do it on an individual level. So what does that, where do we have Chiron and Aries, or where do we have Aries at 20 degrees in our chart? We are, that's where the focal point is for the country's wounding, interacting with our own personal wounding. So we can start there, or we can start with the Pluto, with wherever that is. But we were born, each of us, in this country for a reason. We chose to be here. Why? What is it? What is it we're healing? What is it we're meant to give? What is it we're meant to transform within ourselves? And we've got to stop assuming that we don't have any power, that it is the elected officials that have the power, because that's just not true. I mean, we've been able to change things before as a group. I mean, after all, we are the moon in Aquarius.
Yes.
Hey, I need to correct myself. I was saying 2026 for transiting Pluto over that south node. It's actually going to be 27. Okay. But I agree with Eric, wide orbs. And so the 2026 midterms and the 2028 presidential election, both going to be sandwiched with transiting Pluto there. And then the Uranus return is 27 as well. So I misspoke when I said 2026.
That's fine. I
Just
want to
clarify.
make another point here. I realize I'm the only male on this panel, and I want to actually speak to gender for a minute. Is that my view really is, it's become, I guess, my signature issue around patriarchy, is it really is a male thing to me, is that Trump defeated two women to be president, Clinton and Harris. And my view is that it's not about individuals. It's not about Trump. It's not about Harris. It's not about Clinton. It's about the symbolism. Is that when Obama was elected in 2008, the symbolism of having a president that is not a white male, that are someone of mixed race, and that, because of that symbolism, was able to shift the history of this country. And what I believe the issue is around fairness, around equality, around addressing the patriarchal domination consciousness, is that the symbolism of a woman becoming president is that powerful and that necessary, even if it's not someone we agree with, even if it's someone, it's just the symbolism is what I'm talking about, of the collapse of the patriarchal domination consciousness is necessary in this country. So I don't know what the field will be in 2028. I don't know who is going to be running. But my view is that what this country ideally needs in order to heal its past is to have those in power who were previously disempowered. So to having Obama and then eventually to have a woman president is my view of what this country actually needs to heal its history, because the symbolism of it.
I like that.
That's so fascinating.
Thank you for showing up, male.
Amen, brother.
That's fascinating to me, Eric, because even when we think about people who lived here before America became America, it was matriarchal, right? That's there is
that's the land.
Yes, and
That's
here's the thing is
yeah.
like all of us have our south node of Neptune in Aquarius, you know, and our north node of Neptune in Leo. So we all collectively remember on some soul level, even if we weren't physically here, it's still within like the collective soul of what that felt like long before this happened. And so there's this
Yes,
imprint.
I also want to be clear that I'm not advocating anything matriarchal as a replacement. I am advocating the leveling
Right.
of any type of
Well,
hierarchical domination in order to have fairness where we don't judge things. So I'm not advocating replacement with matriarchy. I'm advocating no more hierarchical, no more any
yes,
group
Mhm.
dominating anything. Nobody's better than
yes.
anyone else. And we need
But
to
that's
shift
how
it.
matriarchal societies were ran. And that's what I mean by matriarchal. When you look
Yeah,
at indigenous cultures, what we call matriarchal was that women had equal positions,
you're
equal
right.
roles to men. It
Mhm.
wasn't women were better
Right.
than. It wasn't
I
a
just want to make
complete.
sure that nuance is in there. And so leveling elitism, leveling that we're the
Mhm.
ones who know best, and opening up that anybody has the right, regardless of any factor, race, gender, etc., that anyone can be president. And we need that
Mhm.
symbolism. Obama helped with that. And I do think that even more so, because half the population is female, we need a woman president for the symbolism of this.
Everybody needs representation, is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something I hear with my oldest kiddo. They're a Pluto in Capricorn. They're 16 and they are queer and they're non-binary and they're of mixed race, all of these things. And so to me, they represent, and lots of kiddos in that generation represent the essence kind of America because it's like there's no what are you or da 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 da. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? There's this blending, and there is this immense amount of fortitude with a lot of these kiddos that I see where it's like representation is necessary. You know, everyone needs to see someone or something at some point in time be a natural role model that looks like them or represents something that they've never seen before because it's inspiring, right? It
Mhm.
inspires people to understand that they have the ability to do that, especially whenever we have, as a society, really repressed other types of identities, right? And so I absolutely hear you and agree with what you're saying because everyone needs that representation, you know?
Well, I know that on the esoteric level, when we look at all of this Cancerian energy, of which we have, Cancer is, of course, we know it's the container. And what is the container for? Here, it's a container for the people. We are the container, and we are, of course, in the container. The mantra of Cancer is I build a lighted house, and therein I dwell. And the purpose is to be there for others, for the downtrodden, for the people who are being harmed and hurt, to be able to come and rejuvenate and regenerate themselves and go back out into the world. The thing is, though, when you have a lighted house, you have to take your light and go into each room in that house and shine that light on all the crevices, all the corners, and clear out the shadow. And this is something that, in order to be the good mother, because what is Cancerian? It is the mother energy, but it's not about gender. It's about the energy of the feminine and the energy of the masculine, because the mother is pregnant with both masculine and feminine. She doesn't differentiate. I mean, the energy itself, the father archetype energy is the archetype of being able to say no, of being able to set boundaries, of being able to come up with strategy. The mother archetype is about being able to manifest, being able to create, being able to nurture. And both, we need both. And we're so out of balance, and both need healing in this country.
Yeah, well said. Another point I want to make about the activity to the US chart is you could also look at progressions. And right now, the US progress moon is in Aries, and it will be all the way till the midterm elections a year from right now. It will be at the end of Aries. So it will be traversing um, the US Chiron in Aries on the way to the midterms, and will still be in Aries for election day a year from now. So the spirit of martial antagonism or conflict or divisiveness or this type of thing is more or less the emotional field or milieu that we're going to be in. And then in 2027, the progress moon will move to Taurus.
So
And
what cycle are we in? What phase are we in with the progressed moon?
oh, it's a relatively new moon. The progressed sun right now is I have it up here. The US progressed sun is at 21 Pisces and the moon is at 13 Aries as I'm speaking. So that's only 9 and 13, 21 degrees from a new moon, which was in Pisces about a year and a half ago. So we're
in a new cycle.
basically a new moon.
We're in an identity crisis.
Yeah. And so that new moon was around 20 or so Pisces, which is square Mars and opposed Neptune in the US chart. So we're really working, this next lunar cycle on our collective Neptune Mars square, which is this issue. Neptune can have what's the vision? Mars, what's our direction? We are figuring out the direction of this country, as we've been saying. And ideally, the high Pisces, the conscious Pisces, is inspired. It's more visionary. But the challenge of Pisces is blind faith and martyr syndrome and following, just,
no
blind
boundaries.
obedience. So that is what we're
I
dealing
think
with.
is
What do we put our faith in? Do we put our faith in certain ideals that this country was founded on, or do we put our faith in, leaders and giving power away to people who have leadership positions and trusting blindly that they know best?
Yeah, I
Jordan,
think that
you
there's
were
a
saying something.
Yeah, I think that there's a reckoning happening. I mean, that progressed moon to me is like that is when I think of a moon in Aries, there can be an immense amount of insecurity. Something's being birthed, and it's an identity. It's like the identity isn't formed yet. And then it makes me think about, for a historical context with America, things are running their limits, right? It's like there is this need for new ideas like we were talking about, and it makes me think of the political parties. At one point in time, like, so there was Jacksonian democracy that became the Democratic Party, and then we had, Jeffersonian Republic that became the Republican Party, and these were very different in the context of what Democrats and Republicans are now. And that is just it, because this is natural law. It's observing what is going on, right? So it's like there were dynamics of each party that had outlived its time, right? And there's this liberation that's happening around this. We're seeing the underbelly of each party. And now we're also seeing new parties come in, just like we did long ago, like with the Whig Party or these areas that I'm talking about. So I even think of like people who are being, who have these grassroots efforts right now. That's very Uranus and Gemini to me, who are coming up with these new solutions, especially this Neptune and Virgo ruling the transiting lunar north node right now. It's like there's this crisis that's being induced to instigate us confronting the actual truth, the actual reality. Now, this is taking time, right? Like it's not happening overnight, but we can see that there's this revamping, this revolutionizing that is wanting to come up even within how America is ran in the party systems through the grassroots efforts, just like they've happened before. And so it's just this, I don't know if I'm even articulating this well, but it's something you said was making me think about this. And even it feels like we're in that in between, almost this liminal space, right? Especially with that moon in Aries. It's like this mass freak out, like, who the hell are we? Like, like this doesn't check this or this or this. And it's like, so it's, the other thing I want to say, and I've got to get off here soon to go pick up my kids, is that there's something I see with America in the context of history too, kind of fused within what I just said, is that there's a lot that's being exposed and has been exposed about the underbelly of different dynamics. We've hit on some key points here, but it makes me think of World War II, right? The last time Uranus was in Gemini. There has been a lack of accountability on America's part because Nuremberg laws were created because of Jim Crow laws. Like, it is a historical reality. And so it begs the question, what is America's part and role that it plays within seeding things into the bigger collective consciousness? But yet, at the end of World War II, what was birthed from that was the civil rights movement. And so that's going back to even whenever the Civil War happened, when Uranus was in Gemini that first time. And so there's this dynamic of accountability, revolution, and coming together for the whole is what I'm seeing. And like, if we can stick to that, and I do see this happening. Like, I cry whenever I like think about even the most recent protests. Like, more people came together in America than there ever has been. So there is this like collective dynamic of, you can really see the heart of, hey, we do inherently know right from wrong. And it's like, we need to keep with that, with honoring each other, with speaking up about the injustices that are happening, and doing it in a way that is solution based, but is also not perpetuating harm. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, those were peaceful protests. I mean, for God's sake, look at Portland. Like, that is just magical to me. Like, I watch these videos and I'm like, what a masterful counter movement that these
Yes.
weirdos I love
Yeah.
created to, yeah, we're blowing stuff up. Let's have a dance party to show
Yeah.
you that.
I want to mention on the US chart, there is something rather interesting that is that I want to point out. As I'm looking at the chart, again, it doesn't matter about the exact time necessarily or house systems. I'm looking at the planetary aspects. And the Aquarius moon is pretty much exactly quincunx Neptune in Virgo at 22 Aquarius, around, depending on the time, to 22 Virgo. And what I want to speak about is this. Is I'm a big fan of the quincunx, and I think it's just as major as any other aspect. My view is we have all of the elitism and perhaps Trumpism as seen in Pluto and Capricorn. That is there. That's a big part of this country. It's always been there, and we have been ruled by the elites who are drunk with power. That's always happened in this country, no matter how we want to sugarcoat it. That's just the reality, including slavery, including racial prejudice and sexism and all the rest. That's Pluto and Capricorn. But there's also what Jordan is speaking about, and I've seen it and I've been part of it. And there is this other dynamic to the American consciousness that is very humanitarian and selfless, and is interested in supporting the downtrodden, which I see as Virgo. And when Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech in 1963, there was a massive pileup in the sign of Virgo, and he was giving voice to those who have been oppressed or discriminated against, or those who have been the sheep to the powerful owners. That is seen with this Aquarius moon, quincunx Neptune in Virgo, and it's all over the place. And this is something that is beautiful about America, is this humanitarian, loving, interdependent embrace of all people. That is there. It is part of this US consciousness, but we do have this Pluto in Capricorn. And of course, this last several years, again, whole sign logic. We just went through what, 18 years almost, or 17 years of Pluto in Capricorn. And look what's happened over that time. And yes, there's been breakthrough. Obama was elected when Pluto got to Capricorn in 2008. There has been both the progress, but also the exaggeration of the challenge or of the consciousness that limits that progress, both. And so this is what I always say to people. Oh, how do you think it's going to go? Well, both things get emphasized during the transits, both the patriarchal kind of me firstism and the reaction to it. It's just playing out. But I want to give voice that you can see that humanitarian spirit, I believe, with the Aquarius moon, quincunx, Neptune, and Virgo. I wanted to mention that.
I would
Oh,
like
that's
to
really
build
good.
on that to say that with both of you were saying the new moon was at our progressed new moon was at 1926 Pisces, and the so it was opposite Neptune and semi-sextile. You know, it was right in between the yod between the moon and Chiron,
Yes,
pointing to Neptune. So
yes.
you want to hear the Sabian symbol for 20 degrees Pisces? A table set for an evening meal. The keynote is an indication that in the end and at the appointed time, the individual's needs will be met among those to whom he is linked by a spiritual or biological web of energies. The significant element in this scene is not only the meal, but the fact that it is an evening meal. To use traditional symbolism, after a long chain of personal existences, the soul returns to its spiritual home at the close of the day of manifestation. There it finds that which renews and amply sustains. The happiness of the beyond of existence is experienced if all goes well. This last symbol is the 70th fivefold sequence of the 70th fivefold sequence promises a satisfying or fulfilling end to whatever one has been undertaking. As the life closes, the soul consciousness finds nourishment in the harvestness of whatever during the whole life has become relevant to the archetypal purpose and destiny of the soul, one of the myriad of aspects of the divine creative word which began the cycle.
Wow.
That sounds like a Thanksgiving to me, which we're going to have in a couple of weeks. And
yeah, I had
that
thoughts
also
of cornucopias and stuff at a nighttime.
Well, this is the goal.
Hey, I have a
Which is
factoid.
so fitting for series, by the way. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
and
I have
our
a little-
cancer, our cancer, all that cancer too.
Yeah, I have a little factoid for you. It's estimated that by 2045, the USA will be a minority majority population. In other words, that's the time period they estimate that the US white Caucasian will become a minority in this country, and all of our other colors will become majority. That's going to be the time period when we finish up Pluto's transit in Aquarius and goes into Pisces.
yes,
Yeah,
that's
that's
an
true.
excellent point.
That's long-term
true.
forecasting, but we got 20 years of Pluto and Aquarius in this country to figure out how we're going to get along with each other.
Right,
Yeah,
that
we
is
all
an
just get
excellent
along.
point. And I wanted to, and that's what I wanted to say before, is that people know the demographic shifts. This is the reality that we are up against. And so the transit of Pluto coming to the US moon will be how we all collectively integrate with that
Mhm.
reality or not. And again, my view is that Pluto will be transiting the US moon for years and years, and even with the whole side logic, for this
Mhm.
entire 20 years, adapting to that reality. Well said, Kim. Thank you for mentioning
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and we've already begun,
Yeah.
you
We
know?
already know
Yes.
that this is
Yeah.
what is going to. So what we're seeing now is the feet dragging temper
Mhm.
tantrum to
Yep.
this reality that we all know is going to happen. And I think it's the best thing to open minds in America that this is the American spirit. This is the Aquarian vision that we need to get
Yeah.
off of the king mentality, the egoic narcissism that is being so amplified right now perfectly. And I do. I know people don't like me saying this, but I actually think that Trump really is the greatest evolutionary catalyst that is imaginable. This is
We couldn't have done
activating
it without him.
Unfortunately,
these
We,
lessons
yeah.
for us to deal with so vividly.
Well,
Eric,
there's
I
a
mean, the same thing happened whenever, and I have this fresh on the brain. So sorry if I sound like a freaking broken record. I just got so immersed in this freaking lecture I did, and we all know how astrology is. Like, it just kind of, you're like, you know, but that's the same thing that happened in the 19th century during the 1800s. Like, we had Jackson, and then we had Lincoln, right? Jackson was catalytic to the evolution. He came in right whenever slavery was being talked about as the abolitionist movement started coming in. So of course we had someone come in who was like, "Oh no, gotta keep it white," like, and created a lot of harm. The parallels to him and Trump are mind-popping, by the way, mind, like literally down to nuanced BS. Like,
reincarnation.
Could easily be.
and then, except for now it's flipped, like, right? Because after we had Lincoln, this time around we had Obama, and now we're having Trump. And so it's interesting. It goes back to like what was the Democratic Party and what was the Republican Party. There is a flipping, there's a polarization, there's a catalytic nature to all of this because it's about evolution. And you can't have evolution if there's not some type of catalytic
Yeah.
energy. And so I'm glad that you made that point because yes, like we're going through growing pains, aren't we? Like that's what I say to my kids when some
Mhm.
shit goes down. I'm like, it's growing pains. Like this is what we're dealing with in America, growing pains.
There's
You
a
know?
there's a saying we either can learn by example or learn by contrast. And we're
Yes.
getting the
Yeah.
contrast right now that's
Yeah.
really waking us up. Says the gal who brought you Ice Barbie.
There you go. But you think about we have this chart. I mean, it's the planets and where they are as far as the signs, that's not going to change. So what is the highest evolutionary journey, or not journey, but highest
Expression.
evolutionary, yeah, of this chart? What is that? What does that look like? I mean, because when I think about Pluto and Capricorn retrograde, well, what does that look like when it's not?
Well, the high end is the transformation of power is assumed and utilized, and that is the challenge, and that the power ideally is going to be available for anyone, rather than just the elites. With to me, that is the transformation of Pluto and Capricorn. Um, if we can get there, um, the high expression. I want to say a minute more about Uranus and Gemini with the Uranus return is innovation, science, ideas. America has a incredible history of inventions, of new ideas, of things that have changed the world, whether or not that's technology or music or computer and electronic industry. There's so many things that America has been the innovator on the world stage. And there's a lot of ingenuity. There's a lot of focus on education. We have so many universities. We have so much, intelligent people in this country doing innovative things. The issue is upgrading consciousness, so to speak, to the metaphysical. For instance, academia, I used to be part of that. I dropped out because of the spiritual skepticism and the lack of metaphysical understanding. We have plenty of smart people, but they're not necessarily attuned to spirituality and metaphysics in a universal way. So I see Uranus and Gemini, we got to upgrade our minds. We're smart. We know how to teach and do universities. Let's now bring in Pluto and Aquarius, the breakthrough into the metaphysical. And here we are with what I want to talk about, Uranus, Pluto trine, Gemini to Aquarius. This is what it's about. And then putting in the middle of that, Neptune in Aries, something new, Aries, to begin around bringing spirituality and consciousness and metaphysics. Neptune, right in the middle of that Uranus Pluto trine, a new beginning with spiritual understandings that are going to inform our paradigms, our academia, our science, even our astrology, which I don't believe it always is. And my view is that astrology can be very much more rigid and patriarchal and good and badism, as I like to say. I think we're just in a time frame of upgrading our minds to the metaphysical. That's what this Uranus, Neptune, Pluto little cool triangle is about. And it's not guaranteed just because it's sextiles and trines. It means that we need to partner with these things and develop in these directions and inform our political and academic and intellectual spheres with more metaphysics. That's what I think is the evolutionary opportunity, but it's a challenge and it's certainly not guaranteed.
So well said, Eric. Thank you.
Okay, you guys, I've got to go pick up kids, and I really appreciated this conversation. All my Capricorn, I've got 5 planets there, loved the hell out of this. I just want to say, so I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan.
Yes,
Eric,
Thank you.
bye, you guys.
Bye.
And we're getting to 90 minutes. So
Oh, yeah. That's true.
if we do we have anything else that we want to touch on before we wrap up?
I just have one last comment, and that is, with Capricorn, we know is the mountain goat and it climbs the mountain. I also see Capricorn as the Hermit card. And when I think of the Hermit card, I think of Capricorn, it's the individual or the country or the consciousness, it's climbing the mountain to reach the pinnacle as far as its spirituality, as far as its transformation. And it reaches it. And then it hears what's going on with the people, and it reaches its hand out to help pull others up too. It's not exclusive, it's not dogmatic. It is about helping others to climb that mountain too. And I believe that is what our country ultimately is supposed to be doing. And we do that on some levels. And we, of course, are having people who don't want to do that. But ultimately, that's who we are. We are good people. We do help others. We will reach the highest pinnacles, and we will transform ourselves so that we can help to transform others. That's my view.
Love it.
Well said.
Maybe so.
Yeah, exactly. Anybody else have any closing thoughts?
Well, like I was saying earlier, I do see a time of a lot of potential uncertainty and upheaval and redefinition of this country. Um, you know, I'm concerned, to be honest, about what's happening in this country right now, and things are uh, reaching more of a climactic kind of turning point around the soul of this nation. Um, and I trust life. And as we talked about, we know where things are headed ultimately in 20, 30 years in the multicultural direction. And my prayer is that we're going to arrive there with limited carnage.
I wanted to share this slide, but I can't. How do I get the top of the screen off? The
Oh, you
little
have to.
layout.
Oh, yeah, you're going to have to change it to slideshow.
Yeah, just make it full screen.
Right, but the thing is covering it up.
Oh, you can slide it over. Are you talking about the
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
that's it. That's it. Hey, I didn't know that. Thank you for that one. Here's the one I use just to show us what we're up against on a generic level. So,
oh,
yeah,
yeah, great.
it's kind of like, this is where we're at right now. And you can add Saturn in here as well because it's making waning sextiles to Uranus and anyway, fire and air to me, it's the duality. We have choice. Are we going to exclude or include in the simplest terms to express it? So, yeah. May that contrast point out the directions we want to go other than the ones we seem to be in right now.
And what's the resolution to a contrast?
Okay, so it's kind of like the simple example is two people get divorced and they're raising a child, and one is raising the child to eat nutritionally, the other one is feeding him junk food. That child eating junk food gets so turned off by it, it finally says, "Can I have an apple, please?" Extrapolate that in generic terms. So sometimes it's just what people are seeing Donald Trump do with immigration right now. They're getting turned off at seeing, U.S. citizens arrested, at seeing, mothers and children, getting hurt, at seeing a minister who's just simply praying, get arrested and knocked down. That's that contrast that's waking us up around the whole issue of
And this
immigration.
Uh-oh, we can't hear you, Eric.
You cut off, Eric. Did you mute yourself?
No, it doesn't show muted, but we can't hear him.
I
You're
don't know.
gonna have to.
Well, you're back.
Oh, now you're back.
Oh, okay. I just got a little thing to say my internet connection was unstable.
Yep.
That happens once in a while here. Okay. What I was just basically saying is this is what is America about? Do we do those things? What does it say on the Statue of Liberty, to return to that we spoke about an hour ago? How do we treat people? What is America about? And this is what's playing out. This is what's happening. We're defining the nature, the soul of this country. What is okay? What are the basic principles that we all are going to agree to or not? So this is again going to be playing out, I believe, for many years. One thing that I will say, I don't want to sound pessimistic, but one thing that I have learned is that change at this level is gradual. I do not see the reality that everyone's just going to wake up someday and hug each other. I don't have confidence in that. What I see is a small percentage of people who have over 300 million guns and they want to use them and they are not going to entertain any ideas that they're in the wrong. That is the reality that we do have in this country, and we have to exist with that type of reality and find ways that we are going to collectively move forward with things of that nature. So there's a realism here, because oftentimes we can get all flowery with wonderful Uranus Pluto potentials, but the reality is that we're talking about change that is not going to unfold smoothly necessarily. We're talking for decades or centuries. So I want to put it in that historical context that evolution is gradual.
Yes, and a couple of the political pundits that I listen to talk about this being a marathon rather than a sprint.
And that's why we have Pluto in Aquarius for 20 years. So we can deal with this stuff. And then even when it gets to Pisces, that's for even longer.
Oh, yeah.
And that is going to activate other issues around compassion, love, of accepting others spiritually or not. So we're going to be working on our metaphysical growth so we can be more of in our spiritual selves rather than egoic self-gain narcissism that this country is very egoically centered around, as Kim pointed out. So these things are about maturing into our spiritual adulthood, which takes many potential years and perhaps even lifetimes and centuries. But if we can make some momentum in that direction, and we can have the amplification of the issues and people are more aware of these things, that's what the astrology is about, and that's helpful. But I do think it will be a long process.
Well, that, a moon phase takes, in progressions 28 years, and,
Yeah.
and then the next new moon will be in Aries.
Yeah. Right.
It's a worthwhile journey. Let's just put it that way.
And there has been progress.
Yes.
Back 250 years ago, nobody named Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama could run for president, and now they can. That in and of itself is progress, and now it's going to be taken further.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. All right.
Robin, any final words?
Stay tuned.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's a long spiral, learning the same lessons in different ways until.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. So.
Thank you all.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. Thanks for hosting these.
Great panel.
Yeah. Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Yeah.
You too.
Yes.
Back at you.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Yep.
Yes.
All right.
All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone.